I hope will be very interesting, certainly stimulating papers this afternoon, Catherine Lydon, and she's going to tell us all about sustainable economic development.
Hi everybody, thank you for coming today. So this is a brief overview of some research projects that Horizon have just started working on, and the idea behind this presentation today is to sort of have a little bit more of a think beyond the app, in the sense that, you know, what more do we have to do with open data beyond just applications on the mobile phone? Can we use open data to solve some of the very difficult problems that the world is facing today? So, just a quick question for the audience. Does everyone here have sort of an understanding of the three sort of tenets of sustainable development? Is there anyone who doesn't have that, or can I go ahead and assume everybody knows what I'm talking about? No, okay. I'll take it a little bit slowly through this section then, if that's okay. So basically, we're going to talk a little bit about the context of sustainable development and open data within that. And then some caveats on using open data in the environments that these two projects are actually placed in. So the two examples I've chosen today are pollution management and regulation and poverty reduction. And basically I'd like to trigger some discussion, and if there's any feedback from you guys, I'd actually welcome that as well, because we're at a very early stage in these projects. And then very briefly I'm going to show a framework for explaining open data to governments that we've been looking at, but that's quite brief. So sustainable development, what do we mean when we say that? The three tenets we can sort of look at are economic, society and environment, and the idea is that all three of these should function together in a harmonious way. So for example, the economic development shouldn't destroy our environment, nor should it create massive social imbalance between different regions of the world and different regions of countries, for example. So, some examples here for economics, we look at poverty reduction, business models to ensure that, for example, the economic development doesn't destroy our environment, so how do we make sure that these are taken together, and the increase of income earning capacity for those in lower income brackets. For the environment, we'd like to talk about reducing pollution, using natural resources more efficiently, and providing access to clean water and sanitation is a very big one in some parts of the developing world. For society, increased welfare and happiness, fairer allocation of physical resources across society, and increased access to services, so for example health and all those kind of different services. The role of open data, so for me, open data provides a method in which you can create feedback loops between these three different systems that are generally treated quite separately, you know, technically within government. Create feedback loops between these different streams in order to create a more sustainable economy, environment and society. So these are some very advanced arrows indicating feedback loops between the three. So some caveats on the use of open data in the two examples I'm going to talk about, and I put them up first so I can challenge you guys to come back with a bit of discussion during the examples. So the most important aspect of open data for these cases is trust. And one thing that we've run into, particularly in India, is that open data, perhaps it's easier to make it available on paper first, so before we make it available in digital formats. Currently they don't even have access to these kind of data in paper format. And basically, you know, transmission, verification, and provenance of the data in question is extremely important. And so a well-defined interface is basically to exchange the data. That's quite obvious. So open data for pollution management. Pollution management and control is a big issue across the globe. And everyone's aware industrial activity is heavily damaging to the environments in which they're located. Our current regulatory regimes, however, are basically based on ecological thresholds that are quite arbitrary. So people are sort of guessing what the threshold is for the environmental damage. Nobody really knows yet. So, for example, if you're releasing a certain type of pollutant into a water stream, nobody knows when that flips over into catastrophic environmental damage. Nobody actually knows the exact threshold for that. So the idea is how to create feedback loops in the information subsystems of cities and companies also, in order to improve this pollution management and control. And so we've been discussing this with a few different companies, and we're at the very early stages of this discussion, but the idea is that we sort of try and implement it in some manner across the world. So the idea here is, this is a pretty basic economics diagram in the sense that on the x-axis here we have environmental damage and the level of production on the y-axis. The idea being that as the level of economic production increases, we're hoping that we can somehow ensure that environmental damage actually plateaus out or is reduced by this. And the idea is that through the use of open data, we're going to try and create dynamic regulatory tools and essentially create a flexible environmental standard whereby companies pay different pollution fees based on how much they actually release into the environment. And also the other thing is that, you know, for a particular environmental damage definitely for a particular pollutant may be fundamentally different to the amount of environmental damage caused in Scotland, for example. So based on where that company is actually located, to have sort of a more flexible standard. That's the idea, the theory. I don't think I'll go into this in too much detail, but the idea, so this is how currently the environmental standards are set, where, you know, basically the idea is that the maximum economic profit, which is Q star P, is balanced out with the penalty cost marked at B. So the idea is that we're able to potentially move that penalty cost at a much lower point of environmental damage. That's the theory. And the idea behind this is that we try to use the city as some kind of innovation platform. So all of the data streams that are coming out of the city, in conjunction with information from companies, will allow us to sort of use the city as an innovation platform. So there are some data that we need to do at the moment. We need to gather, however, these are the three that we're actually working on getting access to. The most difficult one is actually the corporate data, and also getting the data over time about the evolution of the flora and fauna in a particular area. That's quite difficult. So, open data for poverty reduction. This is quite a different project. This is one that is related to... bullet points. No, there's some bullet points missing on this slide, but I'll just talk through it. This is a £1.26 million RCUK project called Bridging the Urban-Rural Divide, which is run jointly in conjunction with the Centre for Technology Development in India. And the idea is that we are looking at rural communities and how we can increase the income and capacity in those rural areas. So this particular one is Uttarakhand in the foothills of the Himalayas, where we're working to look at nut gatherers. So basically they're collecting almonds and different types of nuts and producing oils from them to fit into the global supply chain. So a bit of, just out of interest, how are we on time?
You've got about 12 minutes.
12 minutes, okay. Very quick interaction. I'm going to ask someone.
We have a question.
What?
We have a question.
You guys know the question, so I'll ask someone else. So, excuse me, sorry. Where's your shirt made?
Italy.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
God. You're the only person I've ever asked who knew that. Okay, so, well, Italy, that's very good. Well, you're the only person I know who's answered that. So the global commodity chain, we go very briefly through this. This is essentially a very brief introduction to some idea around development economics. But, so if we take your shirt, it's made in Italy. Do you know where the cotton was picked? No idea. So on the left-hand side here, we have the raw material networks, and at the top you can see their natural fibres. It looks very much like a cotton. It is cotton, isn't it? Yeah. So what happens is, somewhere in some part of the world, someone is picking the cotton for you off the trees. They're generally extremely low paid. They don't get much money for their products at all.